Bible. I guess it's part of the history long. Did you turn that on? Testing. Good morning. Just had to clear my throat. It wasn't the microphone. Good morning, everyone. That demands a response. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome to 1 Million Cups Tulsa. Ooh, this mic is very hot. Smoking hot. All right. Let me give you a quick update. This is Baron. Let me introduce you, Baron. I'm Tim. Dustin over here, Brad in the back. We just got back from Kansas City. I say just, it was on Saturday, Friday. But we were up there with the other community organizers from 1 Million Cups all across the nation. I think there were 40-something of us. And the basic update is by the end of it, everyone wants to be from Tulsa. There was this running joke that everyone was Tim from Tulsa. And so we're the best dressed city. We were the best dressed city too, so you can't beat that. So combining an easy to remember name and a great wardrobe, and everyone thinks Tulsa is the bomb. So it was exciting to see a lot of new cities starting. 1 Million Cups has 32 cities right now, and in the next 2 months they'll be in 50. And by the end of the year, they'll be international, Puerto Rico, Canada, and looking at London soon. They're translating into Spanish. So it really is a movement, and it's expanding all over the world, literally. So very excited to be a part of it. If you're new here today, you may be saying, yeah, that's great. They're expanding. What is 1 Million Cups? Well, I'm glad you asked. 1 Million Cups is a weekly get-together with the community. A lot of us here are entrepreneurs, some of us aren't. And that's totally cool. Our goal is to learn from one another through experiential learning. So you can learn from my successes or my failures if I'm presenting. And hopefully, you can take some of those valuable chunks that you learn and apply them in your life. And then our next goal is to accelerate the companies that speak. Hopefully we can give them tangible feedback and help that moves them a step down the entrepreneurial path. And then also maybe connect them to relationships that they might need. So those are sort of our goals. Today we'll have 2 startups present. They'll have 6 minutes, roundabout there, where I used to cut them off at 6. People didn't really like that, so now we have Baron, who's much more good looking and much more diplomatic than me. He cuts them off at about 6:15, so that works a little better for us. And then we turn just open mic, and we'll have 20 minutes of Q&A, and you can ask pretty much anything as long as the heart behind the question is encouragement or try to move them forward. You can give a comment, it can be negative, but the goal is just keep it professional and try to move someone forward on their path. So that's what 1 Million Cups is. This morning we've got 2 really cool entrepreneurs presenting. I'm going to introduce you to Andrew. Andrew's actually from Columbia, Missouri, and he's all the way in last night to Tulsa. He heard how well we dressed, I guess, and had to come check it out. But he's got a cool idea called the What If Conference that they're running, and they've run a couple of these already. They may be looking to do one in Tulsa at some point in the future, but they're basically asking questions that matter, and then trying to inspire people to do action, to actually do something about it. So give me a warm Tulsa welcome for Andrew from What If.
Yeah, so the What If Conference is this place to ask questions that matter and do something about. About 4 years ago, I was sitting in my co-founder's office, Matt, and he was an English teacher at the time, professor at a small liberal arts college, and I was just a student there. And Matt's background is in social entrepreneurship, English, of course, and then just like entrepreneurship in general. He's written or co-authored 6 books, and then my background is in philosophy, the science of information, physics, mathematics, and I do a little bit of front-end web development work. Yeah, and so basically we were sitting in this office and we looked out to a bunch of different classrooms, and we realized that in a lot of them there was just kind of one professor at the front lecturing everyone. And so we knew that this isn't necessarily the best way to engage critical thinkers or to really inspire people to go out into the world and try things on their own. We know that curiosity and passion drive people. Okay, cool. So we know that curiosity and passion drive people, right? We know that questions lead to deeper understanding of lectures, engagement must be multifaceted to be really functional, and then curiosity needs action. So I can't just come up here and kind of come up with an idea, but I also have to go home and try things. That's why a lot of So ultimately, we left that conversation with the purpose to make the world a better and more meaningful place by invigorating different communities and organizations to participate in this thing called active curiosity, which is being curious and doing something about it. Yeah, so the problem is that a lot of people get caught in these thinking ruts. And so that in the academic world, that's you get stuck in discipline, but in the non-academic world, it means that you get stuck in your industry. So there's bankers, entrepreneurs, and it's hard to break out of that and really learn from each other. And so what we came up with was essentially this model where we create this space of co-creation. That people come together from very different backgrounds to learn from each other, to teach each other, and to be re-inspire themselves. They share new ideas, and they also create action plans. This is the action component to active curiosity. In terms of timing, I think we're pretty relevant now, and a lot of things that we're doing now we couldn't have done in the past. So, for instance, the internet just being kind of more social right now is very helpful to spreading new ideas, but also kind of the democratization of all digital integration makes it really easy for someone in one discipline to learn something from someone else. And so a philosopher can learn front-end web development pretty easily, whereas before that it would have been too far away. So the size of the market, this is something we are still figuring out a little bit, but we're looking a lot to TED and the TEDx model. So TED has a big annual conference, and then there are all these small independently organized events. I think while TED is somewhat of a competitor to us, we're very much different too. So TED is all about lecture, maybe hang out with some people, and then lecture. Whereas What If is wholly participatory. We have short presentations, like 1 million cups, and then we have all of these breakout discussions where people from all these different backgrounds come together and talk to each other and kind of teach each other. Yeah, so I mentioned TED, but also I think in general, kind of rigid thinking patterns is one of the things we compete against. And so we were talking to this one owner of a bank back in Missouri, and she said that, oh, we don't need you to come in to do any consulting for us because we don't have any problems. We're like, whoa. So like every industry is going to be disrupted in some time, and a lot of that is going to be by entrepreneurs like us coming up with new ideas and testing new things and putting things together in ways that haven't been done before. And so the What If conference, What If at Large, tries to create the spaces to kick everything off. Our overall company is kind of 3 parts, right? So it's events, and so that's our big annual conference. We've done 3 so far. And then independent events, and that's independently organized. We do profit sharing with whoever the organizer is. We'll have, this year, I think that's really taking off a lot. So we have St. Louis, Philly, Amsterdam, if we're lucky we'll get Bangkok. Yeah, and so this is something we're growing and working on right now. In terms of, and hopefully there's what else I can. In terms of the second part of our company is content, and so sharing the stories of different entrepreneurs or just different people using active curiosity. We do this through social media. My co-founder blogs on Post, as well as Medium, and then we also just recently signed a deal with Simon & Schuster of New York to make a book that essentially takes like the same model of the conference, but it does it for kids and with questions. The last part of the company is consulting, and so we've built up a lot of workshops in our conference, and we're kind of repackaging that and taking it to organizations or corporations and saying, hey, we can facilitate a product development workshop, or just kind of facilitate the conference. So, and then for organization development, does the same thing with the conference.
All right, well now's a good time to start the question and answer session. So now's the time that we, the community, get to ask questions about What If and about what they're doing to find ways that we can help them grow and accelerate. So if you have a question, just raise your hand and we'll find you the microphone. Tim has a question.
So I didn't quite catch. So do you have a physical conference at all? And what's the cost?
Yeah, so the cost is something that's been changing a lot too. So the first year we did it just as a student organization, and so that was, I think it was $5 per ticket, so it's the cost of the attendee, and that was heavily subsidized out of our pockets. And then so the cost of that conference I think might have been $1,000. The second year, I think the cost of the conference was $2,000, and then the cost to attendees was $25. This year it was about $10,000 to put on. We put it on at a local music venue, and so we had a rock hall, we had rock band. And that one was $10,000 cost to attendees. Our standard ticket was $150, our student was $55, and our VIP was $250.
Can you give us just a quick example, maybe like 15 to 20 seconds of a topic that maybe you guys discussed? I mean, obviously we're asking what if, trying to move forward, but give us a tangible example of sort of what that means and looks like.
Yeah. So one of the questions that we're developing for the book is, so what if you had a box that could make anything? And so to a kid that's reading this, they see that question and they don't necessarily think 3D printers, but we can kind of trick them into talking about 3D printers. And so there's this question, and then we kind of explore the question. So maybe it's like, how big is the box? Does that matter? What kind of box is it? And then we do some content. So these are different people doing things in 3D printing. So maybe the MIT Media Lab developed like a concrete printer. We mentioned that. Maybe like videos. And then at the end of that, there's some action piece. And so maybe it's for you to go out and talk to 5 more people and ask them what they would do if they had a box that could print anything. We do that.
So if you were to come to Tulsa and do this conference, who would be your target audience, and how do you market to that target audience?
Yeah. So that is something that is very difficult for us, I think. So we intentionally go broad. We want entrepreneurs to be talking to CEOs, to be talking to high schoolers, to be talking to bankers. And so it's not that we target per industry, but rather we target per mindset. So kind of like the millennial mindset, I think, is a fairly good example that's also age-biased. I think in general, people who are excited about trying new ideas, and I think a lot of that comes out in just the way we phrase things. So in the advertisements, we try to phrase it in a way that's similarly minded people who read it, even if they're new.
So you've got the event. Who poses the questions, and how do you vet those questions?
Yeah.
And how that's set up?
Yeah. So it's entirely open. Every year we post a call for questions, and anyone can apply. We also go out and talk to our friends and say, hey, like, do you want to presentation? We also have a growing network, and so it's I say our friends, but they're people we just met too. And then when we're choosing the questions, we basically print out this big table and start just crossing them off. We want to make sure that there's a good balance. So this year there are kind of some sub-themes that emerged between education, entrepreneurship, and technology, but that wasn't intentional when we started that process. Does that answer your question?
I have a question. So could you talk about how many people? Could you tell us more about this last conference?
Yeah.
How many people did you have come in there? And then what's the reaction of people after they leave? And how are you getting more people to come? And specifically, someone could do it.
Okay, cool. I might forget parts of your question, but so this year we did a 2.5-day event. So we had a workshop on Friday, and that was a product development workshop. Quirky.com sponsored us, and so we basically took people through 5 hours of from nothing to a product on Quirky.com. And then, so that was workshop. There was a VIP dinner that night. The next morning at 8 a.m. I think 8:30, doesn't matter. Everyone came into the Blue Note, which is a small, grungy music venue. We had 130 something people attend, 150 or register. And then they have these small tables, so everyone's interacting. And I've got a question.
What do they both feedback?
Yeah, feedback. I think, people get so excited, and in part just because they feel like their voices are heard, and especially in the space that everyone is really interested to meet each other. So from the high schoolers or, actually from the high schoolers a lot, when they're talking with CEOs at the same table and they're both conversing back and forth, or there's a retiree and some designer and they're talking about like design aesthetics or something. I think everyone really appreciates these conversations because they're not having them otherwise. So I think that's one of the biggest feedbacks.
How do you measure the effectiveness both of the conference and of your consulting?
Let's see. Probably not as well as we could, is the short answer. So in terms of effectiveness of the conference, a lot of it's based on feedback, and so if we get a lot of positive feedback, oral and on surveys, I feel like we at least did a good job. In terms of effectiveness, this year we tried to strengthen the action component. So in the little breakout discussions, everyone had to come up with an action plan based on what they're talking about. I went through those like last week, and some of them are good, but a lot of them are kind of general. And so I think that's somewhere that we'll develop further in the future, trying to figure out how to bring more depth to that. And in terms of consulting, I think very similarly. So we get feedback based on what the people that brought us in are saying. All the consulting we've done so far has been facilitated conferences. So we'll come and essentially do the same model of organization.
The question is, could you describe a little bit more about what the facilitation process actually looks like? Like, is your speaker facilitating the whole thing, and you start with a question and you end with a product or result of some sort? How do you get people to interact, and what does that process look like?
Yeah, so you mean the facilitation in like the independent events or I'm sorry. Oh, yeah.
Is it this big group of people and you're having everyone split up and talk about certain things? Or So
for the product development workshop, that is a lot of helpful misdirection. And so we kind of ask them we ask them one question. They have like a few minutes in small groups to kind of come up with some answers. Then we ask them a very different question, a very different question, a very different question. And so their mind's kind of shifting all over the place, but they're getting these very critical components down. And then about 2/3 of the way through, we start tying those components together. And so they didn't realize it, but they came up with like a name for a product, some problem, some solution. And that's very awesomely chaotic. And then in terms of like a facilitated conference, that we come in and see if the speakers are people from the organization. We kind of work with them a little bit beforehand to get their presentation ready, their 8-minute presentations. Do about 3 or 4 of those, and then breakout discussion is all next week.
Okay, I have a question. Maybe more a little specifically on the target market, but if you were looking for someone to partner with you on a conference, who ideally would that be? Is it someone like Foolish Things here with this space? Is it a university? Is it? We get people thinking about.
So one of the easiest entry points into anywhere right now for us is anyone doing a TEDx event, because they understand the production value and they understand kind of like this general idea of bringing all sorts of people together. I think we've also gotten a lot of positive feedback from educational facilities, so it's usually higher ed or high schools that get interested in this.
So the conferences are also intended towards the consulting. I guess I'm trying to piece together what takeaway, say a CEO that's at the table with a student and entrepreneur. CEOs also be more likely to customer of yours. What takeaway from your conference are you hoping they have that they go out to organization and say, hey, I need this component to share with my team? That's kind of what I'm trying to figure out, what exactly value you're giving those CEOs at your conference in order to facilitate that move to the consulting piece.
Yeah, so I think part of it is just a new thinking methodology. And so being able to value the feedback from all the people in your organization, that's one thing. In general, additional to that, recognizing that if we were to just have like an action conference, that should be a failure because before you act, you should figure out what you do first, and that's the question part. And so I think those two components.
So what struggles have you had getting this up and running?
Yeah, a lot of struggles. So neither Matt nor I had a business background, which might be good for entrepreneurs. Yeah, so figuring that part out, all of this, so we don't have a rich uncle. And so all of this is like out of our pockets. We're beyond lean, like we're just scrappy. And so like I eat black beans and tuna. It is so worth it because I've been able to facilitate this awesome conference, right? And like I work both at Winnet and then do kind of web development. And then Matt is full-time professor and full-time Winnet. So yeah, I think time and money are some of the biggest struggles.
I've got a question. So what do the next 6 to 12 months look like for What If and for you all? And what do you think is the thing you need to get to 12 months?
Yeah, so our profit model is somewhere between doing these workshops for corporations or organizations and doing the profit sharing with the independent events. And so for us, we need to get as many independent events up and running and as many workshops as we can facilitate. Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things right now. And also figuring out how do we scale this properly while keeping the brand consistent. Yeah, and so also some of this is we're looking at investment opportunities, either from angel investors or from traditional banks.
You mentioned that TED is kind of a competitor in a way. Have you, and I was at a pretty successful, most people have heard of them, so have you?
Yeah, there are a few, yeah, the TED brand is worth a few $1 billion.
Yeah, so it's kind of successful.
Yeah.
So have you looked to see what they did to get to where they are, and what is that, and are you applying that, or are you trying to take a different route to do something different?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Ted was Rich Uncle, and so the Richard Saul Werman was the guy that started TED. He basically lost assloads of money all over the place, and then eventually he sold it to Chris Anderson, the guy that runs it now, for I don't know, a lot of money. And Chris ran a media company and was able to make TED profitable. So that we're not doing that because we don't have money. Beyond that, I think one of the biggest successes of TED is how much they opened up their independent events. And one of the things that they offered were, and still do, are entirely free. And so if you want to do a TEDx event, it's free. And I think we would like to be at a point where we can offer that too. But because it's just Matt and I, so we have to charge now. I think our goal would be to decrease some of that charging. Or some of the, so it's a lower barrier to entry.
So is potentially one of your goals possibly to be bought by TED, or what if TED tomorrow decides, well, we're going to do action-oriented conferences?
Yeah, it's a good one of question. Yeah, so it is something we considered, and I think, I don't know. I think we would enter into that conversation when it comes. I know that we playfully bash TED. We like tongue-in-cheek bash TED. And so, yeah, I think it'd be hard for some of the people that have been following us to be like, oh, well, you just went over to the enemy, like you're trying to change that mindset or anything. But I also think if we're looking at a really good terms sheet, like that's hard if you're eating black beans and tuna.
I have a what if question. What if you got sponsorship for a conference and then you could subsidize, so you're still able maybe to eat black beans, tuna, and lettuce or something?
And caviar. So our conferences we do work with sponsorship, and that was, I think someone asked about learning experiences, and that was that and dealing with the press was very much a learning experience for us this year. So the first 2 years were kind of more at our college we were at, and this year it was more of a step out to the big world. Yeah, and so trying to figure out like how do journalists phrase and see things? How do people who receive sponsorship packets or then phrase things? What is that whole process like? And so this year we were able to negotiate sponsorship with Perky.com, which is really awesome. The CEO has also just recently joined our advisory board. And then a local economic development group, and then a few other places.
So you do have sponsors?
Yeah, we do have sponsors. And the goal would be to increase the sponsorship percentage of our profits over time.
What's the state of the vision? What's the end game? If you were to define success 5 years, 10 years from now, what is it?
Yeah, so we would want to be in as many large metropolitan communities as possible, with a lot of people engaging in essentially this new mindset of asking questions and doing something about it.
All right. Lastly, what can we, the community, do to help you let the conference get to the next level?
Yeah, so Tulsa is to hop on board. If anyone knows anyone that would be interested in organizing a conference here, we can talk a lot. And then and consulting. I think if anyone would be interested in either an inter-organizational facilitated conference or a product development workshop, or we have 1 or 2 in the works.
What's going to happen for Andrew to go to the conference? All right, so thank you all for being here. Once again, this is One Million Cups. If you want to know all the information that I'm going to put on the announcement slides here, all you need to do is sign up for our weekly newsletter. It goes out on Mondays and lets you know who the presenters are for the next week and all the links of the announcements that we have. Just send an email with the subject of the newsletter to tulsa@1millioncups.com. So, here we go. Last week we had Alan Powell, a mobile app that lets you monitor your child's asthma during the night, and they won. Governor's Cup, the undergraduate high growth division. So congratulate them when you see them. You don't want to brag, but you know how to pick them. Finally presented here a couple of weeks ago, and they're offering all of the 1 million Cups attendees to get their app for free. If you want to know how to do that, sign up for the newsletter. All the instructions are there. Next, Dr. Paul Pollock tonight is speaking at the Working Center at the University of Tulsa. If you're interested in social entrepreneurship and doing business with consumers who make less than $2 a day, then we want to make sure they can show up because it's free. Venture Spirit is having open office hours on the 23rd with their managing director, Creighton Emerson, who's actually going to be here, I believe, next week. You can sign up for those. There's an entrepreneurship 101 workshop Tuesday, April 27th, put on by the REI Women's Business Center. It doesn't say you have to be a woman to go to this workshop though, so everyone's welcome, men, women alike. For the last time, my concert, A Brief History.
For the last time.
Celebrating April, which is Gas Appreciation Month. It's going to be here this Saturday. There's going to be a 7-foot Steinway piano right where I'm standing. It's going to be sick.
Tickle some ivory.
Lastly, our community asked. So we decided that we ask all the companies who present what the community can do to help them. We also need to tell you what you can do to help 1 Million Cups grow in this community. So, fresh off the presses, this week we have business cards that say 1 Million Cups. And then it says, every Wednesday, 9 to 10, Foolish Things Coffee. You can hand these out to let people know, hey, this is what's going on. If you care about entrepreneurship, about accelerating startups, about educating people on what startups are doing in this Tulsa community, then come to this. Okay, so as you can see, we have a whole setup here for our second presenter. He's actually a college or high school classmate of mine who manages the Thai restaurant. started the tropical restaurant, but he's here to talk about his poker apparel company today called Run Good Gear. Please give a hand for Tana Connor.
Hello.
There we go. You guys will back there. Well, my name is Tony. I'm basically a Tulsa native. I grew up here. I grew up in the restaurant business, as I said, and as like most Asians in the restaurant business, I like to gamble. So I grew up doing that, and I ended up escaping to San Diego for the beach. Ended up with a marketing degree at University of San Diego. I got recruited to the Los Angeles Clippers, not for basketball, but for sales and marketing, and then actually switched over to the WNBA and came home for the Tulsa Jump Start. And then I left there, started another restaurant called the Tropical, and then now in 2012 during the summer I started an apparel company for poker. And essentially it's called RunGoodGear.com. It's actually more of a lifestyle brand with a niche market for poker players. What that means is what we do is essentially we are giving poker its own bat. I know you kind of like, what does that mean? Well, you've seen Batman here or any of the movies by Chris Nolan. Okay. Well, anyways, the whole meaning behind Batman is it's a symbol for justice and hope for the city. And after Bruce Wayne starts out as one man trying to make a difference, and eventually Batman becomes more than just one man. It's just a symbol. Represents that whole hope and justice, and that's what Run Good Gear does. It's not just one person or one athlete, like in any sport, celebrities and athletes, rise and fall. But brands and symbols always last forever, and that's what Run Good Gear is. Poker is. I usually like to give like a brief history on poker. I'm sure you guys have turned on the ESPN, seen it on TV, World Series of Poker, and in 2003, who's here heard of Chris Moneymaker? Yeah, basically some no-name guy, CPA out of Tennessee, accidentally hopped into an online tournament and then took $40 and then $2.5 million. Later tell you the whole story from life, but that's how poker got started. And of course, with that came the rise and fall of online poker. Essentially, this created this giant mass market of poker players as your little brother, your grandmother, your English teacher could be a poker player at night and still have a regular job the next day, and you had no idea. So, and then of course in 2011 is when the United States actually banned all online poker. And with this causing a huge vacuum for sponsorships and companies in the industry of poker. Just to give you a little taste, here's a small video of kind of who our initial target market was.
I do know that when I was making a lot of money at one point in time, I was looking up how to buy an item at eBay.
Imagine your favorite thing that you can do, your favorite hobby. Someone says, if you just do this all the time, you're going to pay millions of dollars.
So the mint is a money factory. There were so many games, we put so many games in, and it was that easy.
Playing poker for a living was a way for me to grab a brand eccentric I wanted. It was banned originally from Australia when I was 21. This time I was more so politely asked to leave.
I never in a million years would have ever expected a girl to be a professional online poker player. I would have said it was more likely that a girl to be an astronaut. I want a big fat one. Say yeah.
It's very interesting game when you think about it. Like, what would you do to prevent me from winning real money? That's pretty.
Well, so that's kind of the taste of what online poker did to the whole world. And here's when it got banned, Run Good Gear stepped in because all these people would have this identity with them as full-tilt poker, poker stars. Once that got banned, there's just that vacuum that I was talking about in the industry. So RunGoodGear.com replaced it, the brand Run Good, similar to what Tap Out did for mixed martial arts, or DC did to skateboarding, or surfing the Quicksilver, motocross the Fox. That is what RunGoodGear.com is to poker. Much like North Face, Red Bull, which I'll kind of go into some examples here. Here owns a North Face jacket, whereas someone that owns a North Face jacket. When you see that brand, you're always thinking, man, that guy must camp, or that outdoors feel, that lumberjack feel, and then of course when you put on that jacket, you have that feeling of being outside, to being that guy at the poker table at night, gambling, that Las Vegas life, and then eventually when you put that jacket on or that one good shirt on, it's that feeling of being unstoppable, being that buzzer beater, being the clutch guy at that one moment. When we first launched it, we did niche marketing. We targeted athletes, or I guess players that were professional in the field that traveled to circuit around the nation. And then of course, after that, we went into mass marketing. We went into magazines. We were actually on ESPN, Fox Sports, some reality shows, non-charity tournaments, and some celebrity marketing. That's DJ Tiesto there, wearing one of our shirts in Vegas. And then last month, we did our own event. We actually awarded about $250,000 up in Northeast Oklahoma at one of our tournament series. It was the biggest series we've seen in about 4 years, so whatever we're doing, something's doing right. And then in the future, we're moving on to here in Hard Rock, Tulsa. We're actually having our series in September. And then we're actually going back to Downtown Casino in Miami, Oklahoma. And then wrapping up 2015 with 6 more stops. And you can find us this summer at Tulsa's Poker and some of our summer clubs.
All right. Well, it's time for questions. You have a question for Tommy?
So, I've never played poker, ever. Well, I have, but you couldn't call it actually playing. I was at the table. So, if I wear a run good shirt, am I a poser?
Great question. Great question.
You are always a poser.
I'm going to go with no. Is that the right answer then?
Since we have a full house this morning,
I got that reference.
I'm going to shoot straight with you. Can you tell me sort of the concept how you got started? Obviously, you're working in the NBA with the WNBA. What was the thought? I mean, why didn't you just wake up and go, "Oh, I need to start an apparel company for poker"? Were you really good at poker? You had a bunch of buddies playing poker, and then what was the time period once you had that concept to I'm going to start this to actually implement it and decide how to run it?
Gotcha. Well, of course, I grew up playing poker in high school through college. It actually paid for a lot of recreational activities in my life. And then after that, I actually played live for a little while. I traveled the circuit during college where I played tournaments and I met all these people in the industry. And it's really cool because everyone in the poker industry is so small that you get to know everyone and who's somebody in the poker world. And what happened was essentially when online poker got banned, we were like, well, why don't we fill that gap? Because we don't have all these like we'll tell poker clothes and we have poker stores closed and be like, well, we can't wear this anymore. It's it's a joke. They stole all our money. Who wants to wear that brand anymore? So we decided to come up with our own brand. And the term "run good" is a poker term where it means that you're on a streak, you're super lucky, you're hitting everything. And basically, we came up with it in February in 2012, and we launched that summer. So we're actually only about 2 years old. And of course, it's actually blown up more than we can imagine. It just kind of we saw that need for it, and we just filled it so quickly that it's what it is now.
So the .com is very prevalent in the logo of the brand. And where did you learn about online merchandising, and who do you look to as kind of the gold standard of where you want to be in the online presence?
Well, of course, we came up with the .com just because it's low overhead. It's easier to market out to people, especially a lot of these guys who are traveling. They're never in one city, so to get it jumpstart where it is as quickly as possible, we definitely just chose right off the back that we have to do this online. And then the main standard that we kind of try to follow is tap out, especially with their mixed martial arts and how they came about. It's just about taking that sport, and then you have the athletes, but also the main market is actually more of your spectators and your aficionados, and that's who you're selling to as well. Just basically, we're taking the game of poker, which is a hobby, and we're bringing it into as a sport, and that's what tap out is. That's kind of what we thought about.
What's the dream, and how do you get there?
The dream? It depends who you ask.
Eat good food, wear good clothes.
The dream, I guess the dream with wearing the clothes is, of course, being the last guy standing at the biggest event, the World Series of Poker. The company's dream is being part of that, and also having our own especially with the launch of our own tournament series. We're going to be going to 6 stops in 2015 and having our own Oklahoma tour. Right now there's WSOP, which is a Caesars interactive brand, and then there's also the World Poker Tour going on, and there's the Heartland Poker Tour. And we're actually going to be launching our own Run Good Tour, which hopefully will replace all of those one day.
There you go. I guess now 2 questions because someone mentioned. So is the money in the clubs or the money in the events? And the second part, can you kind of talk about your manufacturing process, where these clothes are manufactured, how are they designed, are you carrying a bunch of inventory, or is it just in time? Kind of describe how when someone clicks on your website, place an order, what that logistics looks like.
Gotcha. Well, I guess let me start with the manufacturing one. So with manufacturing, what we try to do is we try to keep low inventory because we know with an Oklahoma you have inventory tax. So we try to keep everything limited. We do short runs. We have our signature shirts that or just our logo shirts that we print in mass, and then we also try to roll out everything every quarter. Manufacturing wise, we actually try to use everything local, so as much shipping costs. Bringing our cost of shirts down significantly. But basically, we have a designer out of the UK, and we actually do stuff in-house as well. So the whole company is based on being as little overhead as possible. That's kind of how we keep them successful. And the real money, though, ironically, is also it's not in the clothes, even though it is the biggest marketing tool we have. It's actually in the events. Just because, for instance, during our main event, we had about 400 people come out, and we would take in probably about $25 from each people, and then the rest of the money would go to the pool, which we awarded for about $200K.
Can you just speak to some of the marketing efforts you guys have pursued and what your next big push is?
Yeah, so we pursued a couple things. We did magazine ads. We did mainly poker professionals who would go on, play tournaments. It's a lot of grassroots through Twitter and Facebook, because all those guys live off Twitter and Facebook because they're always traveling, so that's how they connect with each other. Honestly, if you call a poker player on the phone, they're never going to answer because the only way to reach them is through Twitter, because they just hate talking to people. I don't know why. It doesn't make any sense, but I hate talking to people in real life. But some of the other mediums that we've done is a lot of non-charity events, and then we also done some marketing on billboards in Vegas, and also with we actually have one of our professional poker players interviewing on a reality TV show for the World Poker Tour called Ones to Watch. It's for up-and-comer poker players. So we're like all over the place, just trying because we're so young. So no matter what we do, if we screw up, it's okay. No one will remember 5 years ago.
So I love poker, and I'm terrible at it, but I do love it. I was like really into watching it on TV for a while because those guys amaze me. And you may have already mentioned this. I was helping Tim brainstorm on his little poker zinger things he did earlier. That's what you were talking. So, yeah, he's got some more content here already. But you may have already mentioned this, but it always amazed me, like in the World Series and some of these the bracelet tournaments and stuff. It's like there's always a couple guys that always make it to the last table, or like some of the stars that those guys. Have you had any of those? Are there any notable names that we may have heard of that are wearing your stuff, or you've talked to about it, that always seem to appear at those final tables?
Yeah, no, absolutely. A lot of the guys that we have travel what they call the circuit. So it's World Series Poker Circuit. So that's the year-round one, and it all comes together for the summer for the World Series of Poker. And a lot of those guys always end up final tabling or cashing in those lower events. And then, of course, they get staked by the bigger dudes, or live dudes, or getting the grand dudes. Kind of everyone knows in the poker field. And then what our team is, or where we started, was actually a lot of those guys were up-and-comers, some of the unknowns, which is the beauty of poker, is because you could be sitting at a table and the guy next to you could have like $2 million winning, and you have no idea. And of course, that's what we're kind of doing with our team, is we're bringing the limelight into some of these guys who play lower stakes or mid stakes. And it's always funny because people always ask, well, it's gambling, right? So it's just luck, but actually, the Supreme Court decreed it as a game of skill officially. So it's actually no longer gambling in poker. And the reason you see those guys always coming up to the final tables is, if you think about it, if I was to play against someone who's never played poker before, I would probably have a 60%, 65% edge. That's what the professional poker player has against all of these people in these giant fields. So they're always going heads up versus someone, and they play enough tournaments. It's just like playing as the casino. you're always going to have that edge the more you play or the longer you play. So that's why you see all these guys become really successful. That's what we look for into our new pros.
So a number of the brands that you mentioned as companies that you're trying to model after have gone from somewhat of a niche market to more mainstream. I mean, North Face, you can describe those as almost mainstream brands now. Do you have a plan for going from the niche of target audience of poker aficionados and enthusiasts to a more mainstream audience, or are you planning on staying more niche? And that was the end of the question.
No, that's a great question. Absolutely great question. That's something we talked about, Dan. Of course, we wanted to start out in that niche market and expand. And the reason we chose the name Run Good is actually it's a poker term, but at the same time it can translate to life. And it's very abstract, so a lot of people who don't know about poker can still learn about the term Run Good and be like, oh, what does that mean? And then you can explain to it. It's about being lucky, being on that streak, that feeling that you get when you're just hitting every shot on the board. And that's what we want to take it as a lifestyle brand after we establish the niche market. So we're starting to kind of tear out into hashtag Run Good Life. We talk about the lifestyle of Vegas and the gambling and just that feeling you get from that everything.
It seems like you had a lot of quick success. You're only a couple of years old, and I don't know if you know, but it seems like you had a pretty quick trajectory. So you also talked about the poker world being small and having connections, knowing people. Who are some of the players or people, or maybe what factors do you attribute to the catalyzing how well you've done so far?
Gotcha. Well, a lot of the pros that I've known in the past, I grew up with here in Tulsa. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Alex Potterat or Ben Lamb. Two of the biggest names that come out of Tulsa. They graduated here in high school and had a jinx, and they actually went to the reality TV show, and one ended up taking third place in the main event. But the real reasons that we're so successful is that, of course, there was just that giant need in the market, but more importantly, all the people that we've chosen for our pros are just in love with the company and they want to see it succeed. So through them, they know somebody and they know somebody. And of course, if you catch that top tier market, and these guys are always fine with gambling, you're always gonna have somebody at the table like, hey man, you want to just throw in a match, rep us for your final table? They're like in a heartbeat. And that's kind of how we grew so successful. And we ended up being on the main event stage on ESPN 3 times now, just through noticing those. So it's kind of like high school sports. Just like being the most popular kid and just working out.
So to go the opposite direction of that, what is the thing that scares you most? What keeps you up at night about all of this?
Oh man, great question. Paper cuts, long paperwork. There's a lot of orders to fulfill. Staffing is probably the biggest obstacle in our future. How do we balance it out where we have enough staff to fulfill our needs, but at the same time still keep that low overhead cost? And we have in poker there's seasons, so there's some downtimes. But with the Oklahoma tour that we have planned on, hopefully that downtime doesn't happen anymore. So that's probably the biggest fear.
Okay, I have a question about how you're building teams. It sort of tags off of that, but your family's got a restaurant, or you've started another restaurant, then you've got this going. Talk about how do you stay focused? Do you have a team around the restaurant that runs that you just check in regularly, or are you out at the restaurant running at the table at the tropical? I mean, how does that kind of work for you?
Yes, it's all about teams. It's about just finding people that believe in what you believe and making sure that everyone stays on track. At the restaurants, we have a team there, another team there. We have a team in our office that handles a lot of our day-to-day stuff. And then the best part about this company is that I can literally do this from my phone in bed at 2 a.m. in the morning. It's just all about the way we've grown so much is through Twitter and Facebook, and you can just contact pretty much anyone through a phone now. And the reason I'm able to do that is just because even if it's I'm carrying 3 plates out to the table and it's late at dinner service, I can hop back in the kitchen and do a little bit of tweet about my good gear or follow someone online who's doing well. So it's really simple because I don't need as much staff, but as we grow, we're going to be
you're talking about pros that you are signed up with, or you're talking about staking a team out, it's a running a team kind of like a Formula 1 team, it's a running a team. Is it the same or two different, or what's your perspective on that?
It is similar. What right now we do for the 2015 or 2014 World Series of Poker, all these guys are representing us for your gear. We actually do a competition where it's like a 10K prize pool, and they break up into teams. And if you get first place, you're getting 50% of the prize pool, and it breaks down from there. And then also during the tournament series, we use our pros to promote it, and talk to their friends, and bring more friends to it. And they actually get free publicity and buy-ins for tournaments. So it's like almost like Red Bull after the Red Bull events where the pros they take all the fees and the combinations, and then as they go out, they're not responsible for those fees, but they'll still represent the group.
So one of my aspects is that so she's part of the team. They have 6 players, and they all contribute. And one of them goes maybe once a month to go. They all play in Mexico. But so do you have any plans or other players doing that they stay with the team? And they have kind of their professional athletes that go out and play a tournament here and there.
Oh yeah, a lot of the online companies, since it was banned in the United States, like you said, they can play in Mexico, and PokerStars and Full-Time Poker still has like online pros that they'll pay for and they'll send out. It's kind of a battle because once online companies come in back into the United States, it's like a double-edged sword. It's going to boost all of everything that we've done because we're an online company, and it just creates a bigger market for us as well. But at the same time, it's going to detract from all those pros coming in as well. So it'll be interesting to see how it works out. But I think we have established such a niche, kind of like indie market with our company in the poker industry that despite these mainstream guys coming in, like Tulsa and PokerStars, is that a lot of the guys want to stick with us because going to those companies is more like selling out than us. It's kind of like a startup company, just basically game with the players.
You, of course, have your niche market with poker players and everything, but you've also mentioned that it's all about that good feeling whenever you're on a good streak and you're taking risks and that kind of thing. And all of us here, a lot of us are entrepreneurs and definitely know that feeling. I'm wondering, are you marketing this to kind of the general public about like the feeling of, being on a good streak in poker and branding it that way, or are you specifically like only staying within that niche of the poker players?
Gotcha. We haven't yet. We're hoping to in the future. It's slowly trickling out to be a lifestyle brand. Right now, since we're 2 years in, so we're trying to just focus on the poker players currently. But we would absolutely love to expand it to the risk takers of the world and people who see just the gamble in their lives every day. We're not too sure on how to do that just yet. We're just trying to set the marketing aspect, like Run Good Life, and see kind of what the response is. We have some of our pros who go out to these World Poker Tour events, so like Aruba and Mexico and whatnot. They always take pictures, tweeting about us, doing the Run Good Life lifestyle. So that's kind of how we're trying to transition into the mass market.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your initial financial position when you were starting on QuickGear.com. Like you and the company specifically. So was it that it's funded more so by like some of your savings, or did you have initial investment?
Gotcha. I was lucky to play online for myself and actually accumulating quite a bankroll with it, and I ended up using a lot of that stuff on early investments. Basically, I had just this fun cash flow coming in that I could always use to start a restaurant or start a new company. So it actually just the actual sport of poker helped me create this company, which is I guess kind of ironic. But the initial investments were the website, some designs, and of course inventory. And then once that got started, it was basically just keeping track of your cash flow, just budgeting out, breaking down a lot of the advertising opportunities down into months. So that way, everything is going to overwhelm you at once. You don't try out and stuff. Take advantage of a lot of stuff that comes your way. So it's kind of like a slush fund. But other than that, I think the most important part with any business is just keeping track of finances and tax.
last question, what can we do as a community to support Run Good?
As a community, it's kind of funny. It's when Hard Rock Tulsa approached us about doing the tournament series, after 2 years of being out, they actually had no clue that we were actually in Tulsa. So that's something we're trying to work on, as being having a bigger presence here in the city. Because you know, like when you think of Nike, you always think, oh, they're headquartered in Seattle. That's what we want to be here in Tulsa. So the way you guys can help us out is anything you know to help me out with kind of contacting like local media, getting more attention on the company, and see what opportunities that we can do to help outreach to those media folk and also just individual people and organizations in town.
Awesome. All right, let's give it up for Run Good. Good run. All of our both of our companies today. They were awesome. Thanks to you all for coming. I want to end today with a little bit of encouragement. There's a great blog post by Venture Capital, a guy up in Hurwitz over the weekend. It talked about how, as entrepreneurs, we all have these moments where like, big old crap moment, like what's going to happen? You know, something bad, you know, goes wrong or whatever. And his advice was this: no one cares. Your investors don't care, your employees don't care, your customers don't care. So just run your company. Don't waste any energy worrying about things you can't control, because there's always going to be those things. So just go out there and just do it. So that was a kick in the butt for
Dustin, good run.
Run good, on your way out, grab cards to share with friends. So grab these, take a handful of them. So thanks again, everybody. We'll be here back next week at 9 o'clock.